What happens when one of comedy's biggest legends walks into what should have been a lighthearted morning show interview, only to find himself blindsided by a host with an agenda? From the moment Eddie Murphy stepped onto the View set, the tension was almost electric. The energy in the studio was friendly enough at first, but underneath something sharper was waiting to surface. And nobody, not the audience, not the crew, not even Eddie himself, could have predicted the explosive confrontation that would soon unfold between him and Joy Behar. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how quickly a conversation can spiral when respect disappears from the room. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this one is bound to spark debate. Eddie Murphy was in the middle of a press tour for his latest project. The View was supposed to be just another stop, a simple, friendly chat to promote his film. He walked onto the set with his trademark grin, greeting the panel with warmth and professionalism, the kind you'd expect from someone who's been entertaining the world for over 4 decades. Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and the rest of the panel were clearly thrilled. "Eddie, it's so great to have you here," Whoopi said, smiling. "We've been looking forward to this conversation all week. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure," Eddie replied, his easy charm filling the room. The first few minutes went smoothly. Eddie talked about his new project with humor and passion, delighting the hosts with behind-the-scenes stories. His timing was flawless, his energy infectious. He spoke about his love for storytelling, about the joy of making audiences laugh. "After all these years," he said, "I still get excited about every new project. There's something magical about creating characters and making people feel something. Laughter, emotion, surprise. That's what it's all about." Sarah nodded. "That passion really shows. You've managed to stay relevant across so many generations." "Comedy's universal," Eddie said. "People need to laugh, especially now. If I can give them a few minutes to escape, to feel good, that's the job. That's what matters." But that's when the tone shifted. Joy Behar, who had been unusually quiet until now, suddenly leaned forward, her expression tight. "Speaking of comedy," she began, her voice cutting through the warmth in the room, "don't you think some of your older material might be considered problematic today?" The studio fell silent. Eddie's smile faded slightly. He blinked, registering the abrupt turn. "I'm sorry, what do you mean exactly?" he asked, calm but cautious. Joy pressed on. "Well, there were jokes in your old routines that some people might find offensive now. Don't you think you owe your fans an apology for that?" Whoopi stepped in gently, trying to diffuse the tension. "Joy, maybe we should focus on Eddie's current work." But Joy wasn't having it. "No, I think this is important," she said sharply. "We're living in an age of accountability. Shouldn't public figures take responsibility for what they have said in the past?" Eddie straightened, his demeanor shifting from relaxed to resolute. "Let's get something clear, Joy," he said evenly. "I've been doing comedy for over 40 years. Comedy pushes boundaries. That's what it does. At whose expense?" Joy shot back, her tone rising. "Some of those boundaries you pushed hurt people." "Comedy has always been about holding a mirror to society," Eddie replied, voice steady but edged with steel. "If we start rewriting art based on what's acceptable decades later, where does that stop?" Joy leaned back, smirking faintly. "So you're saying you don't regret any of it?" "I'm saying I'm proud of my body of work," Eddie said firmly. "I've evolved as a person just like anyone else. But I'm not going to apologize for making people laugh, or for doing what comedians have always done. Tell the truth, even when it makes people uncomfortable." The room grew tense. You could feel it in the silence between words. Audience members shifted in their seats. Whoopi looked uneasy. Sarah glanced toward the producers. "That's a convenient way to avoid accountability," Joy muttered, her voice dripping with contempt. Eddie's jaw tightened. His eyes locked on hers. And in that moment, the easy charm vanished, replaced by something far more controlled, far more dangerous. "Convenient," Eddie repeated, leaning forward, his voice low but brimming with controlled anger. "You think it's convenient to be ambushed on what's supposed to be a friendly interview to talk about my work? You think it's convenient to have my entire career reduced to a few talking points? You cooked up before I even walked in here? I'm just asking the questions that need to be asked." Joy shot back defensively, though there was a flicker of satisfaction in her tone, the unmistakable glint of someone who enjoyed the confrontation far more than she cared to admit. Eddie's voice sharpened. "No, you're not asking questions. You're making accusations. You're demanding apologies for jokes written decades ago. Comedy that reflected a different time. Tell me, do you hold every comedian to that same standard? Or just the one sitting in front of you right now?" The studio air grew heavy. The other hosts shifted awkwardly in their seats. Sarah Haynes tried to speak up. "Maybe we can—" But Eddie wasn't finished. "Let me ask you something, Joy," he said, turning fully toward her now, his tone calm but cutting. "Have you ever said anything that someone might find offensive? Ever made a joke that didn't age well? Because if we're suddenly rewriting the past, shouldn't the same rules apply to everyone?" Joy's face reddened. The smug certainty that had carried her through the first half of the interview began to crack. "That's completely different," she stammered. "I've never made the kind of material that you have." Eddie raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Really? You've never joked about anyone's looks, background, or beliefs? Never said something that might have stung someone watching at home? Come on, Joy. Let's be honest." Whoopi interjected quickly, sensing the show slipping out of control. "Okay, maybe we should all take a breath. We're on the same team here." But Eddie shook his head. "No, Whoopi. I think this is exactly the conversation people need to see. Because what's happening right now, this right here, it's the double standard that's killing honest dialogue in this country." "Double standard?" Joy scoffed, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Eddie, I think you're being a little dramatic." "Dramatic?" Eddie gave a humorless laugh. "Joy, you ambushed me on live television and demanded I apologize for my entire career. And I'm the one being dramatic for pointing out the hypocrisy." The audience sat frozen. No laughter, no chatter, just stunned silence. The tension was suffocating. This wasn't the playful back-and-forth daytime TV was known for. This was something raw, unfiltered, a full-scale clash of ego and ideology. "I wasn't ambushing you," Joy insisted, her tone brittle. "I was asking legitimate questions about accountability and entertainment." "Legitimate?" Eddie shot back, his composure cracking at the edges. "No, you came in with an agenda. You decided before I even sat down how this was going to go. And now you're trying to gaslight me into believing this is about truth." Sarah jumped in again, her voice careful, trying to save what was left of the segment. "I think what we're all really talking about here is how artists evolve, how they grow while still honoring their past work." Eddie exhaled, glancing at her with a faint nod. "Exactly. That's what real growth looks like. It's not about erasing history or pretending it never happened. It's about learning from it and still creating from a place of truth." But Joy wasn't ready to let it go. "Authenticity doesn't excuse harm, Eddie," she snapped. "Words have consequences. Public figures need to acknowledge when they've caused pain." "And there it is," Eddie said, his tone laced with disappointment. "That assumption that comedy's purpose is to harm. Do you even understand what comedy is, Joy? What it's for?" Joy straightened in her seat, defiant. "I understand that comedy can marginalize people. It can reinforce stereotypes that do real damage." "Comedy can also liberate people," Eddie countered sharply. "It can challenge power, expose hypocrisy, make people think. It can turn pain into laughter. That's what makes it powerful. But I guess that doesn't fit the narrative you came here to push, does it? By now the entire panel looked tense, eyes darting between the two. The control room was in chaos. Producers waved frantically from behind the cameras, but neither Joy nor Eddie was backing down. Finally, Whoopi raised her voice, calm but firm, her moderator tone slicing through the noise. "All right, both of you," she said, eyes fixed on them. "Let's take a breath, because this right here, this isn't helping anyone. We're all adults here," Whoopi said firmly, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. "We can disagree without tearing each other apart." "Whoopi's right," Sarah added quickly, trying to bring the conversation back to neutral ground. "There's room for different perspectives on these things," but Joy wasn't done. She leaned forward, her tone sharp, eyes fixed on Eddie. "I just think that when you have a platform as big as yours, you have a responsibility to use it thoughtfully." That was the breaking point. Eddie sat back for a moment, staring at her in disbelief before responding, his voice low but seething. "A responsibility to who, Joy? To you? To whatever committee decides what's acceptable this week? Or to the millions of people who have supported me for 40 years? People who actually understand what I do? To society," Joy said, with an air of moral certainty that only made her sound more pompous. "Society?" Eddie repeated, incredulous. "You think you speak for society now? You think your personal outrage represents hundreds of millions of people? I think I speak for people who believe in basic human decency," Joy replied, her voice rising as she tried to reassert control. "Basic human decency." Eddie's tone hardened, his words deliberate and cutting. "Is it basic human decency to ambush a guest on your show? To attack someone's life's work without context or understanding? To demand apologies for art created in a completely different era?" Joy's face flushed crimson. Her voice trembled as she shot back. "I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who built their career on offensive material." "And I don't have to sit here," Eddie snapped, "and be attacked by someone who invited me under false pretenses. Did you really think I was just going to sit here, smile and nod while you tore down everything I've built? While you reduced my entire career to your personal grievances?" The studio was dead silent. Even the audience didn't dare move. The tension was electric, volatile. The other hosts exchanged panicked glances, clearly aware that the show had spiraled far beyond recovery. "This is exactly the kind of aggressive behavior I was talking about," Joy said, grasping for moral high ground as her voice wavered. "Aggressive behavior?" Eddie let out a cold, bitter laugh. "Joy, you've spent the last 10 minutes attacking me, my work, my integrity, and now you want to call me aggressive because I won't just take it? That's unbelievable." Whoopi raised a hand, trying to de-escalate what had become a televised disaster. "Okay," she said firmly. "I think we all need to take a breath and remember, this is supposed to be a conversation about important issues." But Eddie wasn't interested in diplomacy anymore. The gloves were off. The calm, good-humored legend had vanished. And in his place stood a man who'd reached his limit. He stood up slowly, deliberately. The movement alone made everyone in the studio tense. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet. Too quiet. "You know what, Joy?" he said, staring down at her. "I've been in this business for over 40 years. I've faced critics, haters, people who've tried to tear me down for a headline. But I have never, and I mean never, met someone with the audacity to invite me on their show just to ambush me with this kind of self-righteous nonsense." Joy shifted in her seat, clearly rattled now. "Eddie, I think you're overreacting to a few simple questions." "Simple questions?" Eddie's voice erupted, echoing through the studio. The energy shifted instantly. Shock rippled through the room. "You call attacking my life's work a simple question? You call demanding I apologize for making people laugh a simple question? Lady, you wouldn't know a simple question if it introduced itself and handed you a note card. Behind the cameras, producers were signaling frantically for a commercial break, but no one dared move. The tension was beyond control now. I was just trying to have a meaningful conversation about accountability, Joy said weakly, her confidence finally cracking. Eddie laughed, but it wasn't the warm, infectious laugh audiences knew. It was cold, hard. Meaningful conversation? Joy, you wouldn't recognize a meaningful conversation if it came with subtitles and a user manual. What you were trying to do was score cheap points by humiliating someone you thought would sit there and take it. Whoopi stood up too, her expression grim. Eddie, maybe we should all calm down for a minute. No. Whoopi, Eddie said sharply, turning toward her but keeping his eyes locked on Joy. I'm not calming down. He took a step closer to the edge of the stage, his voice steady but charged with fury. Because what just happened here, this isn't journalism. This isn't accountability. This is arrogance pretending to be virtue, and I'm done pretending it deserves respect. I'm tired of calming down, Eddie said, his voice cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. I'm tired of pretending that this kind of behavior is acceptable. I'm tired of watching people like Joy turn every discussion into an opportunity to lecture, to shame, and to virtue signal, instead of actually listening or engaging with ideas. He turned his gaze back to Joy, whose confidence had all but evaporated. Her face had gone pale, her hands trembling slightly on the desk. You want to talk about harm, Joy? Eddie continued, his tone low but seething with restrained fury. Let's talk about the harm you've caused with this little stunt. You took what could have been a thoughtful conversation about creativity and art and twisted it into a toxic ambush. You've shown millions of people watching right now that honest dialogue is impossible when one side walks in with a script designed to destroy the other person. I never tried to destroy you, Joy protested weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. Eddie's lips curled into a humorless smile. Really? Then what do you call this? What do you call 15 minutes of attacking my work, my integrity, my entire career? What do you call demanding apologies for comedy that made millions of people laugh, that gave joy, real joy, to audiences around the world? If that's your idea of a friendly conversation, I'd hate to see what you call hostility. Rakhane stepped in hesitantly. I think there might be some miscommunication happening here. There's no miscommunication, Sarah. Eddie cut in sharply, though his tone softened when addressing her. Joy knew exactly what she was doing when she wrote those questions. She knew exactly what kind of reaction she wanted. The only miscalculation was thinking I'd sit here and let it happen. Joy straightened up, desperate to salvage control. I think you're being paranoid, Eddie. Not everything is a conspiracy against you. The words hit like gasoline on fire. Eddie's eyes widened, and the fury in his voice erupted. Paranoid, he thundered, his voice echoing through the stunned studio. You just spent 20 minutes attacking everything I've ever built, and now you want to call me paranoid for noticing. That's not journalism, Joy. That's gaslighting. You think you can tear someone down and then act like they're crazy for defending themselves? No one in the audience dared to move. The air was electric, thick with disbelief. This, Eddie continued, his voice dropping to a measured, dangerous calm. This is the problem with people like you, Joy. You believe you can say whatever you want, attack whoever you want, and when someone pushes back, you label them as overreacting or emotional or paranoid. Well, that doesn't work with me. Not anymore. Joy sat frozen, eyes darting toward the cameras, as if searching for an escape. You know what the real tragedy is, Eddie said, quieter now, almost mournful. You had the chance to have a real conversation. About art, about comedy, about how the world's changed and how we change with it. You could have asked about process, about meaning, about the craft of making people laugh in hard times. But instead, you chose to make this a political attack. Because that's the only language you seem to understand anymore. Outrage. He paused, then turned directly to the camera. His final words came out slow and deliberate, each syllable a dagger. And that, Joy, that's more offensive than any joke I've ever told. The studio was silent. Not even the hum of equipment broke the stillness. Every eye was on Eddie as he stood there, unflinching, the image of calm defiance. Finally, Whoopi cleared her throat, her voice trembling slightly. Well, this has certainly been an intense conversation. Eddie exhaled, the anger in him subsiding into something heavier. Disappointment. He looked around the set one last time, then said quietly, "It didn't have to be, Whoopi. It really didn't." And with that, he turned and walked off the set. The audience sat in stunned silence. The hosts didn't speak. And Joy Behar, red-faced, shaken, and utterly humiliated, stared down at her notes, realizing too late that she had just picked a fight she could never win. If you enjoyed this incredible breakdown of what happens when someone tries to take down a legend and ends up getting dismantled instead, make sure to subscribe and tell us in the comments. What do you think Joy Behar was really trying to accomplish with her attack on Eddie Murphy?